What's up guys, Peter von Panda here. Hey, I have my Chronos Smartwatch Smart Disc. This is a disc that I did an early review and unboxing. And this is a disc that fits on the back of your phone and adds some notifications through your phone. Now I wanted to kind of give you my final full-on review on it. So I've been using it the past 4 days, and there's a reason I'm giving you my review here, you know, as quickly as I am, to be really honest. Now, if you saw my first video, I was a little bit ticked at the company and the way they handled the pre-orders, and I wasn't a real big fan of that. But I was really hopeful about the product itself, and it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to try to cover the ground that I want to cover about this and hopefully provide you information, one, to decide if you want to buy it, two, if you're pre-ordered, you know, if you want to continue to have your pre-order and get it, and three, you know, just kind of give you my thoughts on the smart watch market. You know, first of all, my opinion on the Chronos disc here is that it was somewhat brilliant in that it's allowing you to use the watch of your choice. A couple of things that you'll have to remember is that you've got to take the disc off to charge it. So if it's on your watch like this, it does sit, it'll fit around the disc, but look, I mean, it just snaps out like this. And then once it's fully charged, just tap it and it'll light up green. So you're good to go. Now, you also get an app on iOS. I think some people are still waiting for the Android app, even though that's been promised. So keep in mind, at the time that I'm shooting this, there is no Android app. So if you're an Android user, don't pick this up, because this, without this, is worthless. Okay, so here's the app. I've gone ahead and loaded it. I've got it paired. You can see here that, you know, it's showing paired. And there are some screens here for measuring your activity, right? Active calories, steps, etc., etc. And it's kind of nice. It's not necessarily super unique in its design, but it's kind of shows you where you're collecting your steps throughout the day. I don't know if this was totally accurate. Obviously, I wore it my first day and had some decent data, but it is what it is. Now, the app itself is fairly limited. So let's go here kind of to this main screen where it's got your Chronos Bade, whatever. A couple things to keep in mind here. You can tap this button to find your Chronos. And it's doing a little vibrate, vibrate, flash, flash. And it's kind of flashing all the LEDs. A couple things I will tell you about this. This doesn't really make any noise. The vibration is, you can absolutely feel it, especially when I'm holding it here. And I can actually feel the vibration here better than when I mount it to the phone. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. The other thing you can see here is that even though it's flashing all of the LED lights, it's not super bright, right? Now imagine this being kind of under your watch, you know, and so you're only seeing the edge from underneath things. You know, it doesn't put out a whole lot of light. All right, so let's go ahead and stop that. I found my Chronos. The other thing is you have these brightness settings off, level 1 and level 2. So now if we turn up the brightness, you do get a little bit brighter light. Not bad. The thing I will tell you about this, though, is that it never seems to stay on the brightness level that I choose, which is always the brightest one because that's what I want. But it always goes back to this. And I don't know if it's when the device unpairs because it goes out of range and comes back, or if it's just when the app times out behind the scenes or something like that, but it's always back in this middle brightness, and I hate that because I want it as bright as possible because it can be difficult to see the light, especially under a watch. All right, now you also have this 10-second light button, turns on all the lights here. You can see the kind of the bright high and low difference. And you'll almost always want to be on the high, especially when it's light out. So that's kind of nice. And then a battery level indicator right there. I just took it off the charger, so it's fully charged. And I want to tell you that, you know, the battery, I know people are saying in a couple days. For me, I put it on my watch as I was going to work 8 a.m. one day. I specifically did not charge it to see how long it would last. It did not get through my full second day. So it was totally dead by about 3 o'clock on the second day. Not that bad, because if you're going to bring it home each night and charge it, you know, you're always going to have a full charge. But in terms of a battery life, it's no better than my Apple Watch that I had, which I had to charge really every night to make sure that I was not going to have any power issues. And this is going to be about the same way. I think people are a little surprised on that you'd think something this small, even I was not using it any more than I think I would if I were using it long term. And so, a little disappointed there, but it's a small little form factor, okay? So let's go back to the app here, and they have some fitness thing. So there's a second area here called notifications. So this is where we can go and we can add the app notifications that the Chronos app has been designed to work with. You can also add notifications for contacts. So I put air cleaning duct in here. Now the notifications are kind of interesting because you have lights and vibration. So what you actually can do is you have a fairly large number of combinations between the light color that you'll select, like red, yellow, white, etc., and then the vibrations, which are indicated by these lines. So it's going to be a vibrate, vibrate, vibrate versus a vibrate, vibrate. And then, so you can change it. These have the same vibration pattern, eBay and email, but the color is going to be different. Now, the issue with this is I only have a few here, but how the hell am I supposed to remember and see, oh, it's a white light, double vibrate, that's an email? I mean, that leaves a lot to your own memory. Now, if you have contact notifications here, like air cleaning duct, it's going to flash blue and then go vibrate, vibrate. And what's interesting there is because when it's a phone call coming in, it will keep doing that until the phone call disconnects. So that's actually the most useful one because it keeps vibrating and it keeps flashing as long as it's ringing. To be honest, one of the fundamental problems with this is when you have it on your watch, and let's say you get a text message and it goes buzz, 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 and you look down and the lights and the buzzing is already over. Now you got to remember, well, how many vibrations did it have? What was the light that it showed? So for me, I was not impressed with that because there's nothing that really persists long enough for you to kind of take an inventory of what the thing is doing, okay? I mean, hopefully that makes sense. Because by the time, I'm talking to someone, my wrist is vibrating and I can look down, it's hard, now it's almost impossible to tell, was that the calendar reminder? Do I have to go off to another meeting? Was it an email? Was it an eBay reminder? Kind of a swing and a miss on that. The other thing that kind of sucks is that there aren't very many app notifications here. So if I go add notification and I go to the apps, this is all that they have. Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Gmail. A lot of these I would not want notifications. Maybe Lyft, or an Uber or something like that. But I don't want to get a notification for every Twitter or Instagram post people put. Even email, I don't want notifications on my wrist on that. Really, what I really want, for me personally, you can figure out what makes sense for you, is I want calendar notifications because I want to know if I have 5 more minutes to my next meeting, because sometimes you're not really looking at your watch, or sometimes it can come across as rude. But if my wrist is buzzing and I know, all right, I have 5 more minutes to my next meeting, that's really helpful. But I don't need usually to be told that I have a text message or an email, and if it's a phone call, et cetera, it's going to have to wait, right? So I'm kind of disappointed that there aren't more notifications. To be really honest, I have an app for parking meters in Chicago. You can pay via app, and those do notifications, but obviously it's not available here. That app is not showing up in available notifications. That's what I want to know, is I want a notification when my parking meter is 5 minutes to expire so I can renew it. Okay, so that's interesting. There's also a Find My iPhone feature. So when it's on your wrist and under the watch, I can actually get my iPhone to ring. You just kind of keep tapping the Chronos device constantly, and it'll finally ring through the app. Now, one thing that I found interesting is that the Chronos does kind of register the side tapping a little bit, but for whatever reason, it's not super reliable. And so there's it's ringing kind of an old school phone ring. What it really likes is a top tap. That seems to work really well, okay? So, and that's what it sounds like. The interesting thing about the Find the app or Find My iPhone feature is that it does work when the phone is on silent or on Do Not Disturb. So you don't have to worry about, was my phone on silent? You still be able to find it. I do like the fact that they were clever enough to make sure that it overrides your your features here. And even if I go into do not disturb, okay, see, it's upside down, and I'm not sure why it wasn't registering my taps there. So it's a little finicky sometimes. So I don't know what's up with the accelerometer, but that's how it works. So even though it's on do not disturb right now, it's still working on the Find My iPhone. So I have the Chronos under my watch here, and let me demonstrate the Find My iPhone thing. Tap it here on the top. It figures it out eventually. So again, the large, and the heavier the watch, the more it dampens the effect of the tapping. The other thing is it also dampens the effect of the vibration. So when I'm wearing this watch, I could almost never tell when it was vibrating. In fact, if I was doing anything like typing or talking or moving my hands, driving, when it would go off, if I didn't happen to just have this watch in my line of sight and see that the lights were flashing, I did not even know it was vibrating. Unless you're sitting there at your computer really still or on the phone or something like that, then you'll notice it. But if you're kind of going around and doing anything that's requiring any motion, it just, the vibration, especially under a large cased watch like this, just kind of feels like the watch moving around on you, right? It just, a lot of mass being added to that Chronos disc just dampens the vibration way down and almost making it useless. Like I said, only when phone calls came in did it seem to buzz long enough to make it useful. All right. The other thing I will tell you is that sometimes the notifications were a little spotty. So you can see here I have email set up and eBay, and particularly on email, for whatever reason, sometimes it would buzz when email came in, sometimes it wouldn't. That was super unreliable. Even in fact, sometimes when the phone calls came in, it would buzz. That was pretty reliable, but I also noticed there were times when I had my phone on my desk and it was ringing and the Chronos disc wasn't doing anything. So I don't know why there's a little bit of inconsistency there, but it did happen. So if you're buying this for really perfect, super reliable notifications, this might not be the device for you. Now, I will chalk it up to that this isn't even a 1.0 version of the app, I guess. It's like a 0.8 or something. And, this is a Gen 1 version of this Chronos Smart Disc. So, you got to give them a little slack for that. But the, it was spotty. That's the best word I can use for it. It was spotty. All right. Now, let me get on to kind of transition here on the issue. So my issue was, again, notifications were maybe a little bit spotty. The lights and the vibration when you get a kind of a one-time notification like a text message or something don't seem to persist long enough for me to really count on it to tell me what's going on. I almost always had to go back to my iPhone and pull down my notification center and figure that out. But the thing that kind of really started to suck, no pun intended, is this micro suction surface. Now, I showed you in my original video, it's more grippy than tacky or sticky. Okay, and what I mean by that is, okay, I'm pressing my finger on it, and it's not sticky. It's interesting. I thought it was actually like those grippy phone mats that go on your dashboard and hold your phone in place. It does get a little sticky, and you can wipe it down with water and dry it off, and that's when you're going to kind of get the best stickage, but it's more like grippy, like those strips that you put in a shower or a bathtub so that you don't slip around, right? It's got a little resistance, and I'm sure the issue here is that they needed something sticky but was really thin, and you can't put something really sticky on it, because then if you attach it to a watch and it becomes kind of permanent and you pull it off, the sticky stuff might stick to the watch. And especially if you're wearing a watch that's a few $1,000s or something, you don't want to be like, what? There's crap on my watch. So it's got to be unsticky enough that you can pull it off and the microsuction is going to stay with the Chronos, but it's got to be sticky enough to hold it on there. Kind of a delicate balance. But what I will tell you is that the stuff they're using errs on the side of not being sticky pretty much almost at all. And let me kind of show you. If you have a really perfect, flat, unadulterated, like glass-like surface, I'll put the Chronos on there, like on my crystal here, and you put it, it'll stick on there. It doesn't stick with a lot of force. You know, I'm just going to pull it off there, right? I mean, I wasn't prying it off by any means. And, you know, if I were to kind of push it off like that, okay, it's going to be hard for me to kind of explain what it is, but it's not like a sticker even, okay? So keep that in mind. And so the microsuction, while it's grippy, it's not sticky. And I put it on this watch, which has the laser etching here, and so it's not a perfectly flat surface. And, you know, I've touched it, so it's not totally fair. I've been touching that surface, demonstrating it. But, you know, it held on reasonably well here, okay? The problem is, even though it's holding its own weight on right now, when you put it on your wrist, you're kind of moving the watch against your wrist, and so you're kind of working it loose, right? And it eventually kind of can slide away. The difference is, on a watch like this Shinola that has a fairly flat back, but there are raised edges here on these lugs. This disc is slightly raised, the lettering is slightly raised, there's raised and recessed areas. If I press it on here, you can probably get a reflection. There you go. So you can see where the highest raised points are. There's not a lot of place for it to stick to. And so even though I put it on here, stick it on, and, you know, it might stick, and it's not even holding its weight on there. Now, again, I'm not being fair. I didn't use the cleaning pads to put it on there. But ironically, when I saw one of the original concept videos when they were at a trade show, one of the guys, the founders here, is wearing a Shinola with his disc. So I was like, oh, must work pretty well. And so there's almost no stickiness. What ends up happening then throughout the day is you start seeing this disc creep out and peek out, and it starts looking janky, and it's kind of hard to push back in because it's kind of grippy but not sticky. And so you're constantly doing that. Especially on this watch, it never stayed in place. This watch with a flatter back stayed in place more, but this one wouldn't stay in place or came out of place so often. I finally just took the disc off and I put it in my pocket. Now, what I will say about that is when I was in my pocket, it actually worked fairly well in that when I had a phone call or a text message and you could feel the buzzing, you're not normally expecting kind of buzz in your pocket. And so it actually worked pretty well. And again, it wasn't stuck to anything, so there was nothing dampening the vibration. And so you actually had a fairly good vibration sense in your pocket, which made me start thinking about maybe you ditch the lights and you just turn this into like a key fob, right? So you have it in your pocket and you just go off the vibrations, you know, and you don't even maybe have patterns. And maybe you do have patterns or maybe you don't, but maybe you only pick a couple of the most important notifications that you're going to get, like a phone call from your wife or something, and you have it in your pocket. So that was one of my thoughts. But once this came off and went in my pocket for the rest of the day, I was like, okay, whatever. And I'll try another watch, and I'll try something with a flatter back. And I charged it up that night. And then the next day, again, started to peak out. Now, this happened with a bunch of watches. I was taking footage of it. I'm not going to show you all that. It just kept peeking out of the watch, sliding out. And in one case, it was out so far that it actually fell out, and someone in my office said, oh, you just dropped something. Not good. And so the point is here, if this isn't going to stick to the watch, I mean, I understand that they want to try to make it removable so that you can charge it and that you can move it with two different watches. But if it's not going to stick to the watch, it doesn't do its job, right? The whole point of this is to have it with your watch, and if you're always looking at it to try to fix it, it doesn't do its job. So by my third day, this was in my pocket. By my fourth day, it didn't even make it to like morning coffee, and so it just sat on my desk. And so now here I am in like the fifth day, realizing that this isn't something I'll use. I mean, it's a great concept, and I think the guys that sat around in a room and tried to design something and say, listen, we want you to wear the watch you want, but provide you some smartphone functionality or smartwatch functionality, have a good idea. Visually, vibration-wise, you know, you can add that functionality to any watch. It's it's a great idea, but the lights don't work that particularly well, especially in lit situation, especially under large diameter case watches, and the vibration doesn't work that well, especially when attached to the watch, because the watch weight is dampening the vibration. Go up to a bigger watch and it's even more so dampened. So I don't get really either of the kind of the overt benefits of it. The last thing I'll say about it is, since the smart disc kind of purports to be an active wear type of tracking item, as the app has, active fitness tracking, it doesn't work that well, because once you start sweating, the disc, which is already kind of loose, especially when it gets exposed to some moisture, humidity, or sweat, really becomes very loose. And God forbid you actually were out in the rain or something like that. I feel like this thing would just get a little wet, slide right off, and you'd lose it forever and never even know it. So the irony of it is, while it wants to be a fitness tracker for you, the more you move, the less you can feel the notifications, the more likely you are to kind of jar the thing off, and the more sweat moisture you're going to create, that's going to loosen it up even more than that. So functionality in theory is great. The fact that it doesn't work is a deal breaker for me. I'd say day 1, I was unconvinced. Day 2, I was still unconvinced. Day 3, I was frustrated. Day 4, I just gave up on it. So that's where I stood on it. About $100 for this. If you wanted to permanently mount it to your watch, I think that would be a better idea. If you really took some double-sided tape or something like that, because you have one watch that you wear all the time and you wanted to give it kind of a permanent attachment or semi-permanent attachment, might work for you. I am impressed with the functionality built into a small little disc like this. The idea that they have an accelerometer, lights, a battery, a vibration motor. They were able to find a piece of sticky-like material and get it all in this small little package is pretty impressive. To build their own little charger for it, it's pretty impressive. The execution and manufacturing on it is very nice. And for $100 to get all of this, I think is absolutely steal. What I think, though, is that this 1.0 generation of the Chronos Smart Disc is kind of a big swing and a miss. If I were to be a consultant to this company, what I would do is I would change this into an attachment that would fit on the top of the wristband. So that's where I would go with it, and that way you have the lights kind of front and center on your wrist, so that when they flash, you can see them easily and at a glance. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to take this design, all the physical functionality they built, and then kind of build a different version that I think is more useful. But at this point, I'm at the threshold where I'm not going to use it anymore. So take it for what it's worth. Like I said, take it with the understanding that I was a little ticked off with the way the company handled the pre-orders. But for me, it's a product that's moving in the right direction, but still hasn't cracked the code of smartwatch functionality on your personally chosen wristwatch. Peter Von Panda, out.